Hi! Welcome to Surviving Schizophrenia with Steven. My name is Steven. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, I'm here with my dad.
I'm Steve, Steven's dad.
And we're going to talk about what are the early signs of schizophrenia.
So this is such an important topic because recognizing the early signs of schizophrenia can really improve the outcome, the long-term outcome of the illness if these early signs are seen. So we're going to go through several of the early signs or symptoms of schizophrenia and how they relate to Stephen and our experience when Stephen fell ill with schizophrenia at age 12. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we'll go through, some of your memories, Stephen. We were talking just before we started the camera here and started shooting this video about how some of those early memories of the trauma of going through psychosis and these early signs and symptoms of schizophrenia, how they, even 12 years later, severely impact you in your memories.
Yeah, let's get to it.
So one of the early signs of schizophrenia is social withdrawal and sensitivity. And I remember when Stephen fell ill with schizophrenia, so he's 24, his birthday's in September. We started seeing the signs, early signs of schizophrenia with Stephen right after his 12th, birthday.
Yeah.
It was not September, it was October of 2011, November, December 2011. And those signs and symptoms were, social withdrawal. We were, on Sundays, we would go to church, but Stephen wasn't able to be in church with us, with other people.
That was one of the earliest things, and I was very religious as a kid. I always went to church, but it became impossible for me to enter the church for a bit. Not for a bit, actually, for a long time. I think it had to do with the amount of people there, but some of it may have just been kind of irrational early signs of schizophrenia stuff.
Right. I mean, this is the social withdrawal aspect of, one of the signs is social withdrawal. And that, with Stephen, was accompanied by sensitivity to noise.
Yes. I
can remember late 2011, early 2012, and again, Stephen was hospitalized in May of 2012. So there was this 5 or 6 month period prior to the hospitalization in May of 2012 when Stephen was 12 years old. And I can remember being upstairs brushing my teeth. And we're just the three of us, Maria, my wife, Stephen's mom, and us, just the three of us were upstairs. I'm brushing my teeth, and I remember, Stephen, you came into the bathroom, just outside our master bathroom, and said, what's going on? I mean, you were really disturbed. Stephen, do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that. I know it is hard for me to be around people when they're brushing their teeth.
So maybe that's
interesting.
Yeah, so that was so sensitivity to noise sensitivity, social withdrawal is another symptom. A third symptom or early sign of potential schizophrenia would be a sleep disturbance.
Oh, I had that.
And Stephen had a hard time. Can you tell us what was happening? I know you were having a hard time falling asleep.
Yeah. So I would be up till about 3 a.m. because I was tired. But I think my mind was just in a state of distress, maybe. I'm trying to think this through right now. I guess I attribute it to just incredible amounts of stress and anxiety that was causing me not to be able to sleep until like 3 or so in the morning when I was so actually physically tired I could sleep. But then again, it wasn't even good sleep then. My mind was always racing and constantly thinking of stuff.
Right. And this quickly led to odd beliefs. Okay. And it just, it happens so quickly, and we want to give, those of you who are watching this an understanding of kind of these symptoms and signs, because they can just come, for us, they just came out of the blue.
Yeah, they did.
And, Stephen was doing so well. We're now in the fall semester of 6th grade. And all of a sudden, there's this sensitivity that was not there before.
No.
To sounds, not wanting to be around people. Okay, at first you don't think it's not able to be around, but just not wanting to be in large crowds at church or other places, wanting to be more just at home.
And I was a very social kid at the time too.
Right, very social.
So this was very out of the norm for me.
Right, it was completely out of the norm. And, it just caught us off guard, and we were trying to get Stephen into a neurologist and in to see his general practitioner. And, there's not good, unfortunately, we're in the United States, there's not good care even here in the United States in recognizing these early signs and symptoms, because it was just, by the time it came up to the point where we're talking right now with noise sensitivity, the social withdrawal, unusual behavior is another a sign, and I guess in Stephen's, in the context of what happened to Stephen, as this progressed, this like 6 month pre-period before his hospitalization in May of 2012, about 3 months before the hospitalization, Stephen, you had the thoughts of, school didn't matter. Okay, now he's in the fall semester, right? Mm-hmm. School didn't matter. We were having some cognitive issues because, Stephen was having a hard time it was taking him longer to do his homework.
A lot longer.
But you didn't have any physical issues. There was no autism either. We'll address this in another video, but other people, there was some comments of whether Stephen is autistic.
No, I don't have autism. I've been tested.
Right, and you never had the early signs or
no. I had no early signs of autism.
No social withdrawal prior to this.
No.
Actively engaged, getting straight A's in school, and actively engaged.
The one physical aspect that I did have was severe headaches, however.
Right, and that occurred 3 months before the hospitalization. So all this unusual behavior, the severe headaches, sleep disturbance, the cognitive difficulties. At school, it was taking Stephen longer to do homework. But these are all these, and what you'll see on the chart here, all of these signs and symptoms are they're not necessarily going to be schizophrenia.
No,
they can be other illnesses. They can go away over time.
Sure.
If and I think the takeaway here that we'd like to give you is that if you have a loved one that you're seeing these signs and symptoms and they persist, right? If they just go away in a day or two, you're probably okay. But if they persist, then you need to seek professional advice, right, and medical care. And because it's only through a psychiatrist, right, a medical examination by a psychiatrist, that you're going to determine that someone's going to be able to determine whether they have schizophrenia.
And obviously, or of course, I should say not obviously, if you catch it sooner than later, you can avoid a lot of damage and a lot of issues.
Right, and that is so critical. And I wish we had not only caught Stephen's earlier, but that we had jumped on and gotten the correct medication earlier. Because what Stephen said is absolutely true. Recognizing the early signs and symptoms of schizophrenia, is critical to the long-term outcome of the illness. And even psychiatrists here in the United States are reticent. They're cautious, especially I think at Stephen's age 12. This is early onset schizophrenia. It's not usually going to be schizophrenia at that age. It's going to be something else maybe, anxiety disorder. But they're reticent to start prescribing antipsychotic medication in the first place to a 12-year-old. And then they're reticent to go to something like clozapine, which is for treatment-resistant schizophrenia, early on in the illness. And I think the reason is because there's just not the understanding of whether this in Stephen's case, whether this child is going to develop schizophrenia, and they don't want to load him up with medication. I think that's what the psychiatrists were thinking, until they're certain. But then if by the time they're certain that it's schizophrenia, it may be running away from them. It may be getting, they may be behind the game, so to speak, or behind the, however you want to put it. But, playing catch up is essentially where you could be at. So, one of the early delusional beliefs, this is before the hospitalization, this is the first 6 months where everything just came crashing down prior to the hospitalization at UCLA Resnick Neuropsychiatric Hospital, was Stephen's was telling me that school didn't matter. And then this concept of the gods came in.
I believed that there was a war of the gods of heaven and hell, and that I was an integral part of that war, and was being controlled by demons.
Then that led to the hospitalization. I mean, that was the hospitalization came within 30 days of that. That was very quick, because that was those beliefs were fixed at that point. They weren't lifting. You were going a little in and out. I remember about a month before the hospitalization, when you started, saying some of these things to me and to Mom.
Yeah.
I can remember saying, "Oh my gosh, Stephen, be careful what you say, and we're trying to reduce the stress." But that wasn't fixing anything. I mean, and you were coming in and out. You weren't.
And I also want to make it clear, I was never violent, and I never acted on anything like that. That is actually a misconception about people with schizophrenia, is that we can be more violent. We can be more to ourselves, but we're generally not more violent than anyone else.
Right. I mean, the violence in schizophrenia, the issue there is when someone is in psychosis, right? Which then you have a greater potential for violence. I mean, just straight across the board. And that's regardless of schizophrenia.
Yeah.
That's just someone in psychosis. And that psychosis can occur for a number of different reasons. It could be drug-induced.
Yeah.
It could just be massive anxiety. Yeah. And a number of other things can lead to psychosis that won't necessarily be permanent. But coming back to, I remember... Stephen, we'd go on these walks. This was about a month before the hospitalization, right. And you weren't. It wasn't all the time delusional. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether you can even remember back then.
I vaguely remember the walks, but at that point, I was really unwell, and I don't remember a lot of the times from then when I was that unwell. Those memories are pretty much gone.
Okay, so I do remember it was, but you were delusional.
Right.
And it was, it shattered our lives. No one expects this. You can't anticipate it. No. I wish it were talked about more.
I do too.
We need to talk about it more, because Stephen, go ahead. Yeah.
If we can talk about, this goes for anything, right? If we talk about it, we can have understanding. And with understanding, that's how you get rid of stigma. Like, there's a lot of stigma around schizophrenia and mental illness in general. A lot of it unwarranted. And so if people actually understand more of what, say, I'm going through with my schizophrenia, they'll realize it might not be that scary, right? It might not be that however they're picturing. And it won't be something stigmatized then. And it'll just be something that's just there. And I don't know. It won't be as stigmatized if people talk through it. Now, that's not saying everyone needs to. Of course, I wouldn't expect a lot of people to share like as much as I'm sharing, but I think through talking it through, everyone can come to understanding about it and end that stigma.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Stephen. And the other thing that I think is so critical is if mental health issues were talked about more, right, and were discussed, for example, at Stephen's school at 12 years of age, and if mental health issues were a common thing that would be discussed, we may have been able to treat Stephen sooner. Other people might have said, hey, Stephen is anxious. Hey, he's not going to church. Why isn't he coming in? Why is he sitting in the car? Why is he sitting on the bench and not coming in to church, on Sunday? Why? Hey, hey, you know what? Maybe, are you too anxious? Maybe, hey, we know a doctor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. Let's get you to a therapist that can, talk through these and these issues and address them sooner. Early, coming back to early, what the early signs of schizophrenia, the reason why these are so critical is that once you fall into psychosis, the psychosis itself is damaging to the brain. Yeah. And the longer that psychosis stays in place, the more damage you do. Think of it like similar to a heart attack or a stroke. So psychosis is not just a state of being where when you come out of it, you're back to the same you were. No, the problem is with psychosis, you've got brain damage that's occurring, and if it's a very short term, a few hours, a day, maybe 2 days, you may well come out with no problems. And I remember when Stephen fell into psychosis, looking up on the internet and talking to people and researching, right, on Google on what is psychosis and what's schizophrenia. We didn't know what was schizophrenia at that point. Having some serious problems. But as soon as he fell into psychosis, we were very, very concerned. I mean, obviously. And it was not lifting.
How long was it, I forget, that I had psychosis for?
Well, so Stephen's psychosis, started really, these odd beliefs. They started off with this odd belief, school doesn't matter, but then it wound into, these delusional beliefs that weren't consistent. They weren't consistent because Stephen would come out of it.
Right. We could talk. Lasted.
The psychosis that started probably in January of 2012. Oh. January, February, and then we had the hospitalization in May of 2012. So we have about a year, and then it lasted for about 18 months. So Stephen was had these delusional beliefs for an extremely long time. It was only clozapine that pulled him out.
Clozapine saved my life.
Yeah, it really had. And Stephen's got a couple of videos on that.
I do.
We're not pushing clozapine by any means.
No, of course not.
Yeah, it's up to a psychiatrist.
That's up to your doctor.
Correct.
Not us.
Right, exactly.
But it did help me a lot.
Right. I mean, when Stephen was hospitalized at UCLA, when he was discharged to UCLA after 2 weeks at the neuropsychiatric hospital, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia form disorder.
Yeah.
So that is essentially schizophrenia for less than 6 months. Schizophrenia cannot be diagnosed unless you have symptoms for over 6 months. Symptoms of psychosis, delusional beliefs, and other symptoms that would be diagnosed by a psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. So this was about 5 months by the time he was discharged. Schizophrenia form disorder, but it quickly developed to schizophrenia. Yeah. So mood flux. Another one of the early signs would be mood fluctuations. Yes. And Stephen really didn't have mood fluctuations. He doesn't have a mood disorder.
I don't, and my moods don't fluctuate even now very much. I don't really have much experience with that. I mean, I guess nowadays I can come out of my anxiety pretty quick sometimes.
Mm-hmm. But you don't swing between these moods. So
I don't swing between any mania or down to depression and back. No.
Right. And someone that would swing like that and also have a mood disorder and then also have symptoms of schizophrenia, that would be called a schizoaffective disorder, right? So someone with schizoaffective disorder has the signs and symptoms of schizophrenia plus a mood disorder. That is part and parcel of the schizophrenia. So the early signs and symptoms, loss of interest or motivation. That was a loss of interest in school.
Yeah.
Suspicion or paranoia. Yep, lots of that.
Yes.
Vague or odd beliefs. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Looking at the chart here again, unusual behavior. Yes. Not. I remember on those walks just before, we walk, come out of our house and walk for 15, 20 minutes, and I would be talking to Stephen. The unusual behavior would be school doesn't matter. I
guess this would be considered unusual behavior. At school, and I did this really because I was forgetting stuff a lot too. I would write down repeatedly everyone's names I didn't want to forget.
Right, so I remember that.
Real quick, I remember my teacher's look on her face of complete horror when she saw what I was doing and realized.
Right, this was the crash. So this was, this is right before the hospitalization, as everything was crashing down. Stephen, for that last month before hospitalization, was not at school.
No.
The month or two prior to that, he was in and off. On and off. And during that time, there was one time when you were just writing the names of, my name, mom's name, names of cousins. And when the teacher saw that, she was, horrified because, here was a straight A student that's losing his mind.
And she just sent me to the the office.
Right, the
to go
nurse's
home.
office. Right, and then we come home, and it was it's hard to get Stephen in right away to get healthcare treatment.
Yeah.
And so that is, these are the signs and symptoms, of early signs and symptoms of schizophrenia. It doesn't mean you're going to have schizophrenia. If you have these, that's only going to be diagnosed
by your doctor,
correct,
or a psychiatrist, for
right,
sure.
right.
And
So,
I didn't have all of these exact signs either, so it's not.
That's right.
Like you have to have all of them either to.
That's right.
Schizophrenia.
So Stephen, let's transition now to what we mentioned early on in this video about right before we started shooting this video. We were talking about some of the early signs and symptoms in your life of schizophrenia, right? And then you said you weren't looking good. We were in the kitchen, and I said, Stephen, are you okay? And you said, you talked about memories that were coming back.
Yeah. So memories bring back emotions, right, for everyone. But for me, memories of times like we just talked about, when I was falling ill and becoming psychotic and feeling really unwell. Thinking back to that time, even though I can't remember all of it, just thinking back to it, or being told and reminded of those events, really stresses me out. Whether I really realize it or not. I didn't realize I was looking pretty unwell until I looked in the mirror. But just the memories of that time brings back some of the feelings of that time, and that's not really good. But I mean, at the same time, having shot this video has been very cathartic too. So I think even though I was feeling more stressed out before we shot the video, because of the topics of the video, it is actually a good feeling to have talked through it all, even on camera.
Wow, Stephen, well, Stephen, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Brian.
You are amazing.
Thank you.
Just so proud of Stephen, as many of you are as well. Just the resilience. You're a survivor, Stephen.
Thank you.
And working through surviving schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those were some of the early signs of schizophrenia, and it's very important to catch it as soon as possible. Not necessarily an easy thing to do because no one really expects it, but I mean, as we talked about, I think it'd be amazing if it would be talked about more, so then we might realize for people who are going to follow schizophrenia maybe earlier that they're having issues, we can do something about it, and hopefully that'll happen.
Right, and can I just add, Stephen, it's not to be feared. Schizophrenia, and that's one thing I hope your channel, Stephen, changes the perception over time. You often say that you want to destigmatize schizophrenia, and I think that's right. And it shouldn't be feared. It was feared back when you fell ill, certainly, and I'm sure it's now as well. But it should not be feared. It is a serious mental illness that can be treated, and people do recover. People and we've seen even in the comments section, many people watching the videos and commenting have schizophrenia themselves, and are recovered meaningfully, in their lives, and that gives us a lot of
I don't know what the right word is, but a lot of
hope.
Yeah,
a lot of hope.
That is the right word. Hope.
We've seen in the comments by people that have schizophrenia that are older than Stephen, maybe in their 40s or 50s, saying that it gets better with age.
Yeah.
And
which actually, even though I'm not maybe 50 yet, but it has gotten better with age. I've definitely recovered over the years.
Yes,
sure.
Yes, you have, Stephen. Yeah, and you continue to.
Yeah.
So, schizophrenia survivor.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
So I think we'll wrap up the video here. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe learned something too. And we both hope you have a happy and healthy rest of your day. And hope to see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye. Take care. We'll see you in the next video.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.